Tim, good afternoon.
Hey, George, how are you?
Doing very well. How you doing?
Doing great. I'm happy to be part of this.
Good. I appreciate you taking some time today to kind of let our clients in on a little bit more about your company. And for our crowd listening at home, I'm joined today by Tim Sanders. He's the owner and proprietor of Silent Donor, which is a great platform for people that are charitably minded, who are looking to gift to charities, but value their privacy. And they really want to make that at the top of their list when it comes to their charitable gifts. And in the spirit of transparency, I know we're going to focus a lot on anonymity today. Tim is actually the older brother of a very dear friend of mine, Nick, who loves to tell people that when we were 7 years old, he was the first one to ever beat me in a foot race. And I don't think I ever beat him in a foot race after that point in time. But I bring up that story as a little bit of context because when I ran into Tim a couple of years ago, I thought it was, maybe a little bit good time for payback and, puffing out my chest, start talking about my own small business. Tim laid on me that he runs the world's largest anonymous donation platform. So I think, with that background, Tim, I just would like to thank you and all the members of your family for continually and consistently destroying my self-confidence. But I couldn't be happier with the amount of success you've had with your company thus far. And I really appreciate you joining me today.
Excellent intro, George. No notes. Thank you for
I think it'll be very unique of all the podcasts that you'll be on. I've got that familial connection. So, but speaking of that wedding we were at, it was a mutual friend of ours, and it was really the first time I got a little bit more background on your company. And I normally don't go a lot into the backstory of the people that I have on these podcasts because I like to get right to, hey, how does this benefit our clients and what financial value or moral value can they gain out of a different service that they haven't been using before. But I did find kind of your backstory on how your company came to be, and it was kind of driven through some experiences I think you had through work and just personal experiences. So I was wondering if maybe we could just start there, and if you wouldn't mind giving the people at home a little bit of background on how you went down this path.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to start. Just beginning with my work history, and then I'll kind of move into the three main reasons why I thought a platform like this might be useful for some donors out in the world. So originally, I started my career, I worked overseas for a private company where I dealt with a lot of people in the charitable aid sector, primarily in the Middle East and West Asia. I did that for a few years. I came back to the Chicago area where I'm from, and I worked at an innovation management consulting firm where I helped companies come up with new products and new services. And then I worked in philanthropic management consulting as well, where I helped advise, some of the largest fundraising institutions in the US and their donors just on anything related to philanthropy and the programs that they run. But there were three issues I noticed in the industry in general that I thought were problems or areas of frustration for certain donors, and certainly for myself. And the first one was I had given a donation, and I didn't really like the fact that after I donated, I started getting a ton of mail sent to my house and a bunch of emails sent to my email list. And I just was kind of annoyed by it, especially since I donated online and I didn't, choose to donate in the mail in the first place. And then I realized that when I did more research into it, there's like a Better Business Bureau had a whole page dedicated to helping people to get off of those email lists. So I knew it was a frustration wider than me just having it on my own. The second major pillar why I created it was I went to Providence Catholic High School, and I knew that there were a lot of religious donors, especially in the Catholic and Christian faiths. But then I also learned followers of Islam and Judaism as well they all preach about the virtues of giving anonymously and how it's better to give without seeking recognition and things. And religious giving to this day remains the largest kind of slice of the pie chart in terms of where people choose to donate in the US. And so I knew that those donors might be interested in a platform like this. And then finally, there was wealthy donors, people who give large public donations, and they would receive a lot of, basically they'd be inundated with requests from other nonprofits knocking on their door after they gave a large public gift, kind of saying, also you should fund what we're doing. And now they had to have a lot of unwanted conversations off the back of that. And there just wasn't a method or a route that a lot of wealthy donors were choosing to give. And then finally, just the last little aside is that some people do face like backlash off where they choose to donate. And I just thought that if there was the easy or uncomplicated way for people to send anonymous donations, because there wasn't at the time. I thought if I created a way to make it easy and uncomplicated, like regardless of anybody's sophistication in finance or in philanthropy in general, then more people might be interested in sending donations to charity if they could give, more in line with their level of comfort in terms of their privacy. And so that's why I launched Silent Donor. We registered at the end of 2019. And now, a few years later, we have offices here in the US and in Europe, and we've helped thousands of donors and millions of dollars to charity all over the world so far.
Yeah, that's great. And I know you mentioned you have a domestic presence and an international presence, and in large part, you've been partnering with a lot of organizations, right? That's been part of your kind of get the word out campaign. Just kind of getting connected with them. You're just happy that people are giving, I know, but it kind of provides them with a new outlet to give in a way that's been, even if it's less accessible to them, it's been less promoted to them, I feel.
Yeah, that's a great point. And yeah, I forgot to mention, so in addition to working with individual donors and families and corporations, anyone that wants to send an anonymous donation, we also partner with charities and nonprofit organizations all over the world so that they can offer a simple and easy way for anybody to accept or to anybody to give them an anonymous donation. So they don't have the infrastructure or any means to accept anonymous donations currently. They can just use us to allow for any donor to quickly and easily send them a private anonymous donation.
Yeah. Okay. And it's funny, I remember when we were talking at that wedding and you were kind of telling me these different reasons why people give. A couple thoughts came to my mind of just experiences I had even been through similar to you. And I feel like sometimes when people start going down the topic of philanthropy, they think, well, we're talking about, big time implications here, but really it can be little everyday stuff. I remember one time I gave to the same high school. It wasn't a big gift at all, but something to me was just, I think I had wrote on the check anonymous, and I'm just like, I just don't want my name in the newsletter, maybe because classmates maybe I went to school with, they don't need to know, what I'm gifting. And sure enough, I think that was just the little thing that was missed, and I ended up seeing my name listed there. You talk about wealthier individuals having, I think enhanced, maybe not need, but they value privacy more. Had a client who was purchasing a home in another state, and they needed an attestation letter, kind of for us, a testing of how much they had in their portfolio. And they were really concerned about us just limiting what we listed there to the amount they were going to pay for the home. And that was eye-opening to me, was that, they didn't want the seller to know how much money they have. So I feel like the higher you go up that wealth spectrum, the more people value their privacy. But I think even outside of those little things, I think there's a story too you were telling me about, like there are some various serious, implications. I was wondering if you wouldn't mind maybe hit on one or two of those stories. We were talking about that person that went overseas, and just about how it can be a very serious issue outside of the everyday annoyances people deal with.
Yeah, it's kind of a continuum of people that use Silent Donor. It's everyone from I don't want to get an email anymore, or I want to be more private, all the way to actually protecting people's physical safety. And one example that comes to mind is there's a US-based 501c3 organization called Razom, and they help send aid to Ukraine. And a donor who's a dual US and Russian citizen, she donated $51 to Razom in a public donation. And then she went to Russia to visit her grandma. Somehow, since it was a public donation, they found out who she was. They arrested her and they charged her with treason, and they sentenced her to 12 years in a Russian prison colony. She was just recently freed in a prisoner swap, but the fact remains is that she sent a $51 innocuous donation to a U.S.-based company, went overseas, and was. And about a month after that story was international, we had partnered with Razom so that anyone going forward can send them an anonymous donation and not have to worry about their physical safety as a result of where they're choosing to give. And the same is true, so like we partner with the Malala Fund as well. And Malala has the famous backstory of she was shot by the Taliban for championing education for women and girls in that part of the world. And so there are real consequences sometimes for people when they're choosing to donate to whatever cause. They really fear that they'll face reprisals or retribution from people in positions of power. And it's a well-founded fear at this point. There's countless examples. And so we're proud to also serve donors like that. It wasn't really even something I had anticipated when I started the platform. It just had, kind of evolved over time as more and more people found out about Silent Donor, and as we grew and more people found out about what we did. But yeah, it's just from the stakes are just higher for some of those donors, and we're happy to serve them the same way that we serve the tiny donors sending $50 to their community foundation or something. But George, you touched on an interesting thing that I wanted to bring up as well, which is what I call the checkbox misconception on the donation forms when people send out donations. So if you're donating, especially online, there's usually like a little checkbox that says, click here to make your donation anonymous. But I just want people to know that you are not going to be anonymous at all to that charity organization whatsoever. They're still going to get your name and your email and your address. And so we get donors all the time that are like, I clicked the anonymous box, but I'm still getting all sorts of emails and mail off the back of my so-called anonymous donation. And so the experience of the donor doesn't match with what they thought it would be giving anonymously. So then they turn to us to do all their future giving. So when you check that little box, you're not actually anonymous at all. It's just kind of a way that that organization might agree to not list you on an annual report or something. But that's really the only anonymity that you're going to get. All of your information is seen by whoever is at that organization. I just wanted to make that clear.
Yeah, no. It's a good point. And I'm guessing there's kind of a rippling effect for people that, they check that box. I think they're anonymous, but then they are getting hit up by this charity frequently. Another experience I had was, made a small gift to a charity last December, and I think by March I had received like 30 emails from that charity. And I think I'd emailed twice, hey, can you unsubscribe me? That didn't go through. And then even if you get unsubscribed, sometimes you're getting things in the mail then. So it's like, it's not as easy once you go down that road of they know who you are, getting off of their list. Not that it's a bad thing that they're reaching out to you, but I think what went along with that is just that consistent added pressure to give more, I think can almost be a turnoff to some people. Because they've given this organization, they like them, but now they feel like they're being pestered by them. So I feel like it's nice when you can get ahead of the ball game, especially when it's a misconception that, well, if I just check this box, then I'm not going to be bothered all that often. So I'm not sure if you feel the same or you've seen that with donors knowing the landscape better than I do.
Well, sure. It's just true, too, that more people now more than ever are just doing different things to protect their privacy online in a way that they weren't worried about, say, even 10 years ago. So there's all sorts of people worried about who has access to their data, the term big data, and the companies that are, big data companies mining their data against their will, more or less. So people just want to have more control over who has access to their personal information now on the web more than they ever have. And so part of the thesis of Silent Donor is, with all of the movement going towards people, all these where we're seeing people trying to protect their privacy more and more as it relates to their online activity, it also will make sense that they're going to choose to give to charity in a way that it protects their privacy too. So we're definitely seeing more people just want to have that protection and not have their data be just given to anybody. Because commonly, and in your experience speaks to this too, when you give to a nonprofit, it's not uncommon for the nonprofit to share access to their email list or sell access to their email list. So now you're getting emails from organizations that you never even expressed an interest in supporting. And that just goes back to the kind of a fundamental disagreement that a lot of people have with, I signed up to you, I gave you my information, and now you're going and giving it to other people, and I don't like that. And so we are just a channel through which people can give more in line with their privacy by keeping their personal information private to themselves. And obviously we don't give out or disseminate personal information to anybody at any time.
Mm-hmm. I know, speaking of those misconceptions, like that checkbox is a great example. I know another thing you mentioned to me, it's important for an organization like yours to stay above the fray of politics. And I feel like that might be another misconception that people come up with, which is, hey, by using the Silent Donor, they're partnering with all these funds all over the world. Does that mean they're backing, certain agendas that are being pushed by, whether it's U.S. government or a different government overseas? Can you kind of speak to that and how your organization approaches that kind of sensitive area?
Yeah, this is great. Yeah, thanks for this question. Because we do get this fairly often from people. We do not accept political donations of any kind, so it's not federal, state, or local donations. And this is, in accordance with U.S. law. You're not allowed to send a political donation on behalf of somebody else, which I think is the lawful reason, and we don't even touch. So any political donations at all, you can't give through Silent Donor. That also includes like 501c4 organizations that are like elections based or have any dealing with elected officials. You can't give to PACs. You can't give to super PACs here in the U.S., for instance, either. And so we are only existing for charitable gifts that want to go to charities or nonprofits, and also crowdfunding donations, which is something that's a little bit different and interesting. Pretty much everyone has had experience with this, where somebody that sets up a GoFundMe to help fund some cause for your friend or your neighbor. And it might be the case that it could be awkward for you to send financial assistance to your friend or your neighbor. And so a lot of people have been using our platform to anonymously donate to those crowdfunding campaigns, which is great. But we do also want to note, while we're happy to do that, and it is a big part of our business, those are not tax deductible for donors. Since, if you're just giving to your neighbor down the road because they broke their leg or something, it wouldn't be tax deductible the way that it is to give to a charity. So we just ask that people keep that in mind. Of course, we have it written on our website, but just so people are aware, there are basically different mechanisms through which you can give on Silent Donor. The most popular one is to give to charities and nonprofits, but then there's a clearly delineated one where you can give to any, crowdfunding campaign anonymously to support people that might be in your life, and you just want it to be a more private charity. Yeah. So long story short, no politics. Thanks, George.
Yeah. That crowdfunding topic is an interesting one, because it leads me to ask, how you're approaching engaging, all generations, but I would particularly say like the millennial, Gen Xers, maybe that next generation of givers. And I think I'd listened to another podcast you're on where you're speaking to some of these, charities are a little bit outdated and how they're trying to approach gifters and reaching out to them through physical mail. And so, do you see that shift happening? And is that your company, that's how you're approaching it? Is, hey, we're trying to be as user-friendly as we can by doing, most everything online or through like a crowdfunding type platform, and giving them these different options without having to, pester them through some of the more traditional mediums?
Yeah, I fully agree. I think sometimes the industry takes a while especially in philanthropy, it's not the most innovative of industries, and might take a while for them to catch up to people's proclivities now in 2025, which include, if I'm an online donor and I'm giving an online donation, it might make less sense for you to send me something in the mail to give. And sometimes nonprofits think that there's like cross channeling. They think that a donor that gives online might become one that gives through the mail. But I just don't think the majority of millennials and Gen Xers are giving through the mail. Obviously, some people might be, and that's why they have the programs in place to begin with. But by and large, the shift is going away from those. And I think, to your point, it's just driving more people to use Silent Donor, honestly, because they're just getting tired of receiving all this unwanted communications. And exactly like what you described, people have reached out to these charities and they said, hey, can you please remove me from this list? And it's not as easy as it sounds, because they continue to get donations. We had a donor one time tell us a story where they said they gave a pretty large donation, and they said, the only basically ask I have for this donation is that you don't send me anything in the mail going forward. And the very next month, she got like a big calendar and something else. Clearly, they had not, I don't know what mechanism was in place for her to get removed from the list, but it didn't work. And so now she exclusively gives through Silent Donor. But it's little things like that where people's expectations as modern internet age users, it's just not the same experience as it might have been, say 20 years ago, where people might have expected to give through the mail. And now they do, like rightly said, they see it more as a nuisance. So I think as the landscape changes too, we're happy to partner with these charities and nonprofits to allow them to adapt with the times and accept anonymous donations from any donor, because we partner with charities and nonprofits completely for free. And we also work with some wealth advisors and wealth advisory firms, so that they just kind of as a value-added service. So if they have a client that wants to, accomplish their philanthropic giving privately, they can do so through us if it makes sense, given their whatever other happenings are in their financial life. And we can talk more about that planning process too.
Yeah. It's interesting, that story, because again, it just reminds me of a typical high net worth client, and their personality traits and the way that they like to do business. People with like $5 million or more, typically their thought is, listen, I'm willing to pay a little bit more to meet, the needs that I have. And I do have some typically more enhanced needs than just the average individual. And, that's an interesting story of somebody said, I have one ask. one thing that's really, really important to them, right? So they expect,
Mhm.
kind of a little bit more of a white glove service when it comes to, meeting their goals, whether it's in tax planning, estate planning, or charitable giving. Um, that kind of brings me to, I know I've taken a little bit to get here, but I think it's important to think about the reasons why they might want to give anonymously, because I think some people maybe haven't thought about it in the past, or just thought about, why, they would ever want to consider that. But another benefit that we haven't mentioned yet is there's a potential financial benefit for giving to charity. And I know something that's very popular, people read a lot about, is, people will use donor advised funds in order to get a tax benefit for gifting to charity. And maybe I'll just pause there. Let's start with that, because you've got Silent Donor, which is the platform, but you also have your own donor advised fund that's affiliated with the platform. Would you mind just kind of going into that a little bit, the relationship between those two?
Sure, yeah. So Silent Donor is our main technology platform, and then underneath it, we have underlying charitable funds in different jurisdictions around the world, which make more sense to give certain gifts based on where you're trying to give a gift or based on where your tax residence is. So yeah, if you're a U.S. person or a U.S. company and you'd like to give a tax-deductible, fully anonymous donation, it's simple to do through our platform. But that donation will be funneled essentially through our US-based 501c3 donor advised fund that we have set up in order to shield and protect the privacy of our donors. So just going through the process quickly of how it works. So if you're a donor, you just fill out our donation form online. You write in the name of the charity or nonprofit that you'd like to send your donations to. You could even copy and paste the website of the charity if you'd like. Our staff does the diligence to make sure that it is a reputable, established 501c3 charity. Once you send your donations through, however you'd like to pay, we offer credit card donations, bank transfer donations, stock, or cryptocurrency. After your donation comes in, you will get a tax-deductible receipt from our US-based fund, our donor advised fund. So you get a tax deduction in the name of our fund. It does not mention where ultimately you want it to go, but you get a tax deduction from our fund. And then at the end of the month, our fund sends your donation to wherever you specified on our donation form, but it just comes as a donation from our fund, and it does not mention you or your personal information. There's no connection to you whatsoever, thus preserving your privacy and your anonymity. So you get the tax deduction from our fund, and you also get the impact that you want because we send your gift to the charity that you'd like, all without your personal information ever being exposed to any third party. And we're happy also, especially with bigger donations, we'll forward to you either our wire transfer information, or we'll forward to you the donation receipt that we received from the organization, just so you as a donor can have peace of mind that, yes, we actually did send your donation to the organization that you'd like for it to benefit. Because some people, look, the internet is a wild place, and they just want to have the validation that their gift went to where they wanted it to go, even though it is private and anonymous. And we're more than happy to follow up with donors and basically submit to them the proof that we did indeed send the donation to where they want.
Yeah. A couple of highlights there as a financial advisor. And again, this I think is not just specific to your donor advised fund. There's other donor advised funds that check some of these same boxes, but the ability to kind of coordinate with your accountant, get a good sense of, hey, how much you may want to gift in order to be able to itemize and get the tax benefit by using a donor advised fund. That's great. You mentioned the ability to gift stock. That's also, I think, a great benefit for people that say, I've got a lot of built up gain in this stock. I don't have a lot of cash on hand. Is there multiple ways for me to be able to gift? Cryptocurrency, that seems maybe a bit unique to your platform. I haven't heard of that many donor advised funds offering that, but my knowledge may be limited. But I think that ability to gift stock is really great and it's crucial. And so I think all those pieces coming together. The third one that I was thinking of was the documentation, which again is advisor, and I think their accountant, that's key, because people do get audited from time to time, especially when they're attesting that, hey, I'm taking a tax benefit for this gift that I gave to charity. So I know of some clients where we do some gifting a variety of different ways, maybe to donor advised fund or just through a qualified charitable distribution, direct from their IRA, where they've had to chase down the charity to get that confirmation letter. So your platform kind of takes care of that on their behalf, if I was hearing you right.
Yeah, that's correct. So we donate the tax deductible receipts to donors immediately as soon as we receive the gift. It depends. It could be a day or two, depending on if the wire takes a day or two. But right when we receive the asset, we do send tax deductible receipt right away. We also send at the conclusion of the year a summary of all of your charitable giving that you sent through Silent Donor. So you just have it nice and easy all in one place. And then so when it comes tax time and you're talking to people like George, you can go ahead and have all that on hand, ready to make that discussion one that's very easy and simple.
Yeah, that is nice for people, because I know of a lot of people that will give like monthly. You know, they don't want to do one big lump sum. They
Sure.
want to give throughout the year. So that summary, that is a nice feature that I wasn't aware of that. So I'm glad that you highlighted that. Just so people know, I'm assuming there's a cost for doing this. And would you mind, and if not, no problem, but kind of going over just in general your pricing, what does it cost for people to be able to do this in order to, get that extra value for the anonymous gifting?
Sure. Yeah. So we have a pretty simple pricing regime at the broadest we'll ever take of a donation. So it's a percentage-based fee. So 5% is the highest our fee ever goes. So if you send a $100 donation through our platform, we would send $95 to the charity of your choice, completely anonymously. But we're happy to lower this fee for larger donations. And we've done that several times throughout our platform's history with larger gifts. So if sometimes, larger donors are giving big donations and they'd like to see the 5% go down more in line with what traditional DAF percentages are. And we're happy to meet them where they're at, to have those discussions. Basically, every time it's a case by case basis when we talk to these donors and figure out what it is that they'd like to have in terms of this fee. Because interestingly, some donors, because they're also supporting the Silent Donor mission when they're giving, like, we're not just taking a percentage to take a percentage. It's directly what allows for us to offer this anonymous donation platform to donors all over the world. And so there are some donors, even when they're giving large donation amounts, that still elect to give us the full 5% because they know that it's going to support our mission in addition to going to the charity that they're trying to send the gift to. And then at other times, our clients want this fee to be diminished, and we're happy to do that as well. So we just really work with donors, and we try to let them know that our fee is really going towards supporting our platform so that anyone has the chance to use it. And once that's clear, we're just happy to move forward with the client in whatever way that they think is best.
Okay. That's interesting that it kind of builds on itself, that people would be happy to pay not an additional fee, but the full freight, because they know that it furthers the mission.
Right.
They're coming to you with a similar mission that your company has. And so they're happy to, kind of promote you while they're promoting their charity, in order to encourage people as a whole to give more. So that is fascinating. One thing I was thinking about, and again, this is not to pit Silent Donor against other offerings out there, but just in terms of what makes your platform unique and this your decision to have a focus on anonymity and privacy. How are you guys going about that? Is it just, hey, we spend a lot more time and due diligence on our, internal cybersecurity and the, location of, our information, or how we're protecting our donors' data, things of that nature? Can you speak to that at all? How you guys maybe are a little bit different than just traditional platforms out there? Because even some of the big ones, like you do have the ability maybe to gift anonymously. Yes. But maybe there's some nuances there. And it reminds me, it's not unlike any other industry. Like people in my industry, they're like, well, I'm a financial advisor that does investment, but I specialize in tax, right? And that's where they work with a lot of clients where they have this pain point where they're really trying to mitigate their taxes. So could you maybe speak to that a little bit, of where you guys, how you view yourself versus some of the more traditional offerings out there?
Yeah, I think from a high level, we're taking something that formerly was complex, which is sending a completely anonymous donation, and we're just making it as simple as filling out a donation form online. So I think the biggest differences between what we offer and what like traditional DAFs offer, or setting up your own family foundation, is you don't even need to create an account. You don't need to register or anything to give through Silent Donor. If you want to give or set up your own donor advised fund, which might make sense after a discussion with your wealth advisor or something. It might make sense if you have like a longer term view of philanthropy, you're going to be giving to XYZ causes over the years, or you have a big liquidity event such that it might make sense to all at once fund a DAF that way. Like, that's totally fine. But you don't need, not everybody has that long-term view of philanthropy in mind, such that they would need to set up their own donor advised fund, their own giving infrastructure. So what we say is, you can simply use our infrastructure whenever you want to send a private gift. So you don't need to go through the rigmarole of, setting a meeting with your CPA or your accountant, getting the account funded over a couple of days, choosing the investment strategy of your DAF. Instead, that same day you have an idea of where you'd like to give, you can execute your gift through Silent Donor immediately. So it just kind of is a difference on how you're viewing your philanthropy and what your role in philanthropy is for your family. More like legacy-based stuff, you might want to go the family foundation route. A lot of family foundations also have DAFs, though, so there's no reason, they're not like mutually exclusive or anything. The difference too between us is, we send all donations to charities typically within 30 days on our platform. And typical donor advised funds, when you put money in a DAF, there's no timeline when you have to actually send it to charity. So you get the tax deduction the day you put it in the DAF, but then you could leave it in the DAF for 10 years if you want. And, a criticism of typical DAFs is that they have hundreds of billions of dollars right now sitting in them that aren't going to charity. And the only people really that have benefited are the people that took the tax deduction. So that's kind of a big criticism of DAFs, I guess, as a whole, although they do a ton of good for nonprofits. I'm just mentioning some people do criticize it from that perspective. So we send all gifts within 30 days. And then also, we accept donations as little as $50, again, without the need to create an account. And I know some DAFs, there's a higher barrier to entry. I think Vanguard is still $25,000 to open a DAF at all. So it just might make different sense depending. But, we work with some very wealthy donors too. Like the Chronicle of Philanthropy did a story on us last year for a donor that gave an anonymous $500,000 donation. And, it's clear that they were a donor of means, but maybe it wasn't the case that they had this long-term view of where they want to give 5 years down the road. They just had an idea that they wanted to send this very generous donation anonymously and quickly. And so they used us. And it's kind of like, it's just choosing if you'd like to set up your own infrastructure to do something, or you'd like to use already existing infrastructure to accomplish something. It just is going to depend on your circumstances, like I've kind of laid out earlier. So we're just the fast and quick alternative to what a traditional DAF does. And, it's funny, a lot of people, I feel like when they use Silent Donor, they don't even really necessarily understand that they're interacting with a DAF, because I wanted to make it so simple and seamless that it was just like you fill out a donation form and that your donation is going to the charity that you want. We don't need to, we try to educate donors as much as we can that, we are using a donor advised fund on the back end, but it's just so simple to use that you don't even need to have, some people don't even realize that they're interacting with the DAF when they give through our software. So I think that's one of the main ways we differentiate ourselves. And then of course, on the personal information front, where, private information is the whole base of our entire organization. So we do have very particular and very stringent data policies that the big organizations do not have. And also it's so simple to use us because we are this niche offering, which you mentioned. So it's like, there's a million analogies you can give, but if you have like a problem with your eye, you might want to go to an eye clinic where all they do is eyes every day. Or you can take your eye problem to the big hospital down the road, the Fidelity or the Vanguard or whatever, and they could probably do something for your eye, but it's just not the same. So when people come to us, they know that all we do is private gifts. And so they know that they're going to have a private gift sent fully anonymously, because we have heard people's complaints from, oh, I went to some big institution. Mm-hmm. I swear that I elected to give this anonymously, but then lo and behold, they either maybe I misclicked, or maybe it didn't get through their system, and now I'm getting outreach from the organization when I wanted to be private. So it's, if anything, it's just peace of mind too, that if you give through Silent Donor, you know that your gift is going to be private and anonymous, whereas you might not feel that way if you're just using a big institution. So that's kind of the differences in a nutshell.
Yeah, it's sometimes I feel like, and again, this is not to rag on bigger institutions at all, but sometimes that checkbox that they have that you can select to say, hey, I want to make this an anonymous gift gets missed because it's not, readily apparent. Or just at the bottom, it's kind of in small text. And I see that come up a lot when I'm talking to people about beneficiaries. And there's this idea of per capita versus per stirpes. And without getting into the details too much, most people like per stirpes, but the default is per capita for most institutions. And they just think, and I get why they miss it because it's a really small line item on the form when we
Yes.
open up accounts, and they just breeze by it, and they're like, there's 50 other things I got to fill out and sign, so they just don't even think about it. So it is kind of nice when you go to an institution like yours. It's basically, the names on the on the headmask there. It's like a silent donor. It's very
Yeah.
clear what you guys are trying to accomplish there. As you were talking, a couple of, I always like to try and go back to, hey, where do I see that this is a fit for clients of ours? Uh, One thing you mentioned was just ease of use and like quick and simple. A lot of people do gifting at the end of the year. And as you mentioned, they'll come to us. It's kind of like when they want to set up an IRA right around tax time. It'll be like December 26th. So like, yeah, I talked about it with my husband or wife, and we want to give X amount of dollars. And our accountant said we should do it through a donor advised fund. Can you set one up, and can we make that gift before the end of the year? And it's like, maybe. We don't know.
Yeah.
So it's nice to have an option to say, hey, there's a donor advised fund. It's basically all set up. You don't have to set up your own account if you're looking to do
Right.
something, quick and easy and gift anonymously at the same time. But I think that's like a secondary benefit that might be different from, kind of even people that would set up accounts, with us, through another donor advised fund offering. Another thing you'd mentioned, I think this is more in the wealthy family space. People have like $10 million or more, is there are a lot of different options, right? There's donor advised funds. You mentioned family foundations, people who want charitable remainder trusts, or CRTs for short. People have a hard time sometimes deciphering what they should need. And I typically find that people that are at the wealthier end of the spectrum, they just hear things from dinner parties they're at, or they read something in the news about, well, family foundations, if you have X amount of dollars or more, that's what you should be using. But it's, as the world continues to evolve, that's not always a good fit. There's a lot of administration that can go on with those types of tools, which can be a good thing or a bad thing. I think you had mentioned when we were talking, getting ready for this, that, hey, sometimes people want their family members to, have a job through their family foundation, and that's what they're really interested in. That can be a really good fit for that. But a lot of times they just do it because they think, well, I have X amount of dollars. That's what everybody uses in that wealth space. Donor advised fund can be great in many regards. You can get the tax benefit for it. You can send it to any charity that you want. You can get it done quick and easy. But I think there's exceptions to that. But so to me, those were some of the big things that I was looking at from a financials perspective, again, through my advisor lens, that I really attracted about this offering. But just looking at my list here, I think I covered a lot of what I wanted to go over on behalf of our clients. But other items I might have missed, Tim, that you think are worth noting when people start thinking about the charitable gifting, and in particular gifting anonymously.
I think just in general, with the landscape and the environment that we find ourselves in, more and more people are looking to do things privately, especially to mitigate, the crazies that are on the internet. They just want to give in peace. They just like to do anything on the internet in peace these days, and just giving is a small slice of that, and that's all that we offer. So we're happy to do it. But yeah, like I said, as different, you can measure privacy online in a bunch of different metrics. The people that are using like DuckDuckGo, the privacy search browser, or Brave, the privacy search engine, or people that are using like VPNs or Signal and Telegram, the messaging apps, the numbers are in like the hundreds of millions active every day, but the downloads are billions. So it's like, while people are choosing privacy in so many different facets of their life, it just makes sense. If you're an advisor or anybody else, if your client expresses an interest in wanting to give privately, we can help. And so that's the final call I would say is, we're happy to help. We work with clients all across the U.S. of all different levels of wealth. Like I said, we accept donations as little as $50. So you don't have to have a whole mountain of money if you want to make it your own private and impactful difference. You could do so on Silent Donor however you'd like. And we're happy to empower the larger, wealthier families as they donate too. So yeah, it's just, if it fits more in line with people's expectations, hopefully that we can help play a role in making the world a better place little by little by sending charitable gifts. And we also too, without getting too complicated, we do allow for donations to be sent directly to organizations outside of the states as well. If that's something that any clients are interested in, then we're happy to do that. It's kind of more of a niche offering too, but it's something we're uniquely positioned to do with our office overseas too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, we covered more or less everything that I think would be good. But if there's anything that comes up with your audience or something, I'm happy to sit down with you or send you an email too.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate the offer. And yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. Just to close this out is the world is trending more towards privacy in all these different facets and sectors. But I think what always has slowed down any of the sectors from adopting it is just like accessibility and ease of use. And it sounds like that's really, part of why you just started. This was like, this is important, but like a lot of important things, people aren't going to use it all that much if it's not easy for them to use, even if they value it. So I think it's great, kind of the mission that your company's on. I'm definitely going to keep it in mind for myself, for my clients, and hopefully, anybody that's watching this will keep Silent Donor in mind in the future. But I do appreciate you taking some time, Tim, and I wish you and your company all the best in the future.
Thanks, George. And as my parting wisdom to everybody, I would recommend please that they buy their own copy of George McCabe's book. I have one right at my desk that I just refer to during my hard days. Really gets me through. So please, everyone, go buy George McCabe's book.
I'm going to go on record here because, that I did not ask him to do that. He did not say that he was going to do that. So this was not some sort of sordid agreement from the beginning that I was going to promote him and he was going to promote me. But with that being said, I appreciate it, Tim. So thanks again, my friend. I appreciate it, and I will let you go.
All right. Take care.